Presenting Trumpocchio. Once upon a time, in a country far away called America, there lived a carpenter called Vlad. Though he liked to smile, he really had an empty heart and desperately wanted a puppet he could control. One day in his workshop, he found an odd orange piece of wood and decided to try to make a puppet. When Vlad carved the wood into what he thought was a puppet, he heard someone speak, "Make America great again." The puppet began to talk and move. He wasn't a puppet. He was alive. Vlad decided to name him Trumpocchio. At first, this made him very happy. Vlad wasn't happy for long. Real puppets have thick skin and are easy to control. Trumpocchio had a very thin skin, and he acted very strange all the time, even with simple commands. He was not a real puppet at all. He was a fake puppet. This made Vlad very sad. Even though Trumpocchio was a fake puppet, he desperately wanted to be a real puppet for Vlad. But he couldn't control himself. He couldn't even follow simple requests as they confused him. Trumpocchio was very sad. Though he wanted to please Vlad, Trumpocchio was a very lazy fake puppet. Instead of finding a way to become a real puppet or doing anything helpful, he became a very naughty fake puppet who could only tell lies. One day, while practicing lying, Trumpocchio decided he wanted to be king. He thought he could fool everyone into thinking he would be a good king. Once he was king, he would steal all their money and buy a spell to become a real puppet. He would say it was the best campaign ever. Then Trumpocchio heard a tiny, squeaky voice. "This isn't a campaign. This is a movement." He looked down and saw a very tiny, silly-looking, talking leprechaun. But instead of listening to the leprechaun, he just made fun of the leprechaun, and then he kept on lying. Trumpocchio loved lying so much, no one could stop him. He convinced himself this was the only way he could become a real puppet. Meanwhile, Vlad was still sad because Trumpocchio was such a liar. But he still wanted to give Trumpocchio another chance. "Trumpocchio, I will trust you if you can make America great again. I want you to learn about the most favored nation trading principle in international law. Go make America great again, Trumpocchio." Vlad made a handsome calendar and sold many copies to pay for Trumpocchio's computer so he could go to school. But Trumpocchio didn't want to learn about America. He was just so lazy. He didn't want to learn about anything at all. Instead of learning about facts and history, he just made things up and kept lying. "I don't need to go to school. I'm so famous, all the girls beg me to play with their kitties just so they can play with me." Even though he didn't know how to use it, he took the computer and cried as he ran away. Trumpocchio always cried when he couldn't get his way. Trumpocchio ran and cried until he couldn't run and cry anymore. Then Trumpocchio saw a puppet show that was being put on by two kind brothers. Curious, he traded his computer to buy a ticket. However, Trumpocchio was such a famous liar by now, nobody liked him, not even the real puppets. When the real puppets saw Trumpocchio, they began to shout, "Get out of here, Trumpocchio! We don't want you here!" Everybody seemed to hate Trumpocchio, but the two puppet masters didn't understand what all the fuss was about. We feel sorry for you, Trumpocchio. We want to give you some advice to help you become a real puppet. America is already great. America is already strong. And we promise you, our strength, our greatness, does not depend on you. The two kind brothers also found Trumpocchio's computer and gave it back to him. Trumpocchio felt embarrassed and was so angry at the real puppets and the two puppet masters, he ran away crying again. On the road, he met two strange characters, Mikowan the rat and Rudy Colludi the weasel. Mikowan the rat realized Trumpocchio was a liar, but Mikowan was a rat, and rats are very good liars. Mikowan decided to lie to Trumpocchio, and Rudy Colludi helped by not telling the truth every time he had the chance. Trumpocchio, what a wonderful computer you have. Give it to us and we'll trade it to the doctor who can turn you into a real puppet. Trumpocchio was not very smart, not even for a fake puppet, and he was easily fooled by Mikowan the rat and Rudy Colludi the weasel. He gave them his computer. Then they took Trumpocchio to a patch of quicksand. Once he sunk up to his waist so he couldn't chase them, they ran off. Trumpocchio shouted at the rat and the weasel, but no one heard him. Trumpocchio kept sinking in the sand until it was almost nighttime. Luckily, a young woman with blonde hair, the Storm Fairy, saw Trumpocchio. He had sunk down in the sand and was buried to his chin. She started giggling. "What are you doing down there? You look like a huge mushroom head, like a toadstool," she laughed. Trumpocchio begged the Storm Fairy to free him. He promised to make her a star on a TV show he said he had. The Storm Fairy had always wanted to be a star, so she freed him. Once Trumpocchio was free, the Storm Fairy asked to be made a star. Trumpocchio laughed at her. He was still just lying. The Storm Fairy wasn't happy with Trumpocchio and all his lying. She decided to teach him a lesson. "When I found you, you looked like a mushroom. And then you lied to me and said you would make me famous. Now each time you lie, your nose will grow and your skin will turn more orange and your hands will shrink. So tell the truth, or your hands will get so small people will call you tiny," she said. "You are the one who's in trouble. I just now turned your face into a horse face. Now you are extremely unattractive, both inside and out. You are a fat, ugly lowlife," said Trumpocchio. The Storm Fairy laughed because none of this was true. She watched as Trumpocchio's nose grew, skin turned more orange, and hands shrank. Meanwhile, Vlad had not heard from Trumpocchio for some time now. He started to get worried. The truth was he didn't miss Trumpocchio. He just wanted to be the only person to make Trumpocchio their real puppet. Vlad went looking for him all over town. Vlad searched all day, but couldn't find the lying fake puppet. Just before dark, he heard someone say they heard Trumpocchio caught the biggest fish anyone had ever seen. He didn't realize this was someone who just heard one of Trumpocchio's lies, so he built a rowboat to check the nearby lakes and rivers for Trumpocchio. By now, Trumpocchio had lied so much he was very orange, with a very big nose and very small hands. He finally started to realize the Storm Fairy was telling the truth. He was so sad that his lying caused all this, so he decided to go home and be a good fake puppet for Vlad. But Vlad wasn't there. Vlad had gone looking for Trumpocchio. Trumpocchio thought about looking for Vlad, but he was still very lazy. Instead of looking for Vlad, Trumpocchio met a very naughty boy named Paolo. Paolo told Trumpocchio about a great castle in a land far away. This place was called the Great Sea Lake, and here no one ever did any work. Everyone just played games all day and did nothing. Even fake puppets could do nothing all day, every day. Trumpocchio went, and Paolo was right. The Great Sea Lake was so much fun. Trumpocchio learned about a special game called Club and Ball. He played it every day, often many times a day. But Trumpocchio was very bad at Club and Ball, so he lied many times every day about how good he was. Trumpocchio lied so much, he was completely orange. His nose had grown as long as it could, so his ears started growing, and his hands and feet completely disappeared. Apollo saw Trumpocchio had turned into an elephant, so he sold him to the circus. But Trumpocchio was not fun to watch. On his first show, he fell and scraped his leg. He still had very thin skin. He cried a lot, like he always did. Trumpocchio was a very bad performer, and no one really liked his show. People just watched him so they could feel better about themselves. But it was all very sad. Even the show was a very bad show. All Trumpocchio did was complain and tell the circus owners that he was the best performer they ever had. The circus owners were so upset with Trumpocchio, they made him live with a fish at the Great Sea Lake. Sometime later, the Storm Fairy decided Trumpocchio must have learned his lesson. She asked the fish at the Great Sea Lake to turn him back into a fake puppet. "If you are good, I will take a paper with your name on it, roll it up, and turn it into a wand. When I tap you with the wand, you will become a real puppet." Trumpocchio said he would be good from then on. He wanted to be tapped by the wand with his name on it. Trumpocchio tried to swim to leave the Great Sea Lake, but before he could leave, something scared him. It was a large sea turtle. Trumpocchio swam as fast as he could, but he never exercised, so he couldn't get away. Even though turtles are very slow, it was easy for the turtle to catch Trumpocchio. The turtle swallowed Trumpocchio in one gulp. In the turtle's stomach, Trumpocchio thought he heard something scary. The Storm Fairy removed the spell, so he knew he could lie again. He pretended to be brave. But it was nothing to fear. Trumpocchio had found Vlad. But when Vlad saw Trumpocchio, he decided he couldn't stay in the stomach of the sea turtle anymore. He didn't want to be trapped with a liar like Trumpocchio. Vlad started punching the inside of the turtle until it opened his mouth. Then Vlad ran out. Vlad won the victory. Trumpocchio pretended like he did everything, but as usual, Trumpocchio did nothing to help. Even though Vlad did all the work and won the victory, and Trumpocchio did nothing and had everything given to him for free like he always did, they were both very tired. They both decided to take a nap. The Storm Fairy noticed the two napping. She had an idea. She took the paper with Trumpocchio's name on it, and rather than making him a real puppet, she decided to spank him to teach him a lesson. "No one likes a liar, Trumpocchio. Now that I'm spanking you, maybe you'll remember this and learn to tell the truth." After 2 minutes, she stopped spanking Trumpocchio. Her arm wasn't tired. The Storm Fairy realized no one had ever done that to Trumpocchio, especially a young fairy who looked like her. He had always been so naughty. He seemed to like being caught. "I thought this would work, but maybe I'm being generous," the Storm Fairy said. She realized Trumpocchio just wasn't worth her time. She stopped, got her things, and left Trumpocchio all alone. And soon everyone else did too. And then Trumpocchio was alone again forever, because nobody likes a liar. The end.